Cartoons, the animated frontier. These are the voyages of the Cellcast podcast. Its continuing mission to explore strange new cartoons, to seek out new animation styles and new creative storytelling methods, to boldly go where so few ever go again.
Episode of the Cellcast. Joining me today is a man who's about as mad as a hatter. Welcome, Jacob.
Why? I don't know what you're talking about.
I think this is how last episode ended, didn't it?
Apparently. Just be like, yeah, things are just mad, I tell you. Why, thank you. And let me introduce our co-host, a man who has a tendency of hearing voices in his head. Welcome, Drew.
Well, yes, but that's usually when I'm talking to myself. No, it's not. It's when you're doing all this other stuff. And you're doing... No, it's when I'm talking to myself. I know what I'm talking about. How are you, Jacob?
Nurse over here now. All right, let me introduce our co-host, our special guest for the night. He was on our last show, but he's getting a new title this tonight. Welcome, the Panda Father himself. Welcome, Dallas from Geek Devotions.
I've been upgraded to co-host. I'm slowly taking over all y'all's podcasts.
Apparently.
My ultimate plan is to take over you guys. I'm going to take over Retro Rewind next week.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, what?
So I'm taking over you guys. Next week I'm taking over Retro Rewind. That's just the plan.
Yeah.
I'm taking over like I took over Gotham.
Stunning and Brave.
He's literally turning into the Roman.
We got
that's
this.
What it is.
He's consolidating all the power of the podcast and turning it all into just one empire.
The entire Culture Box Media Network all under one thumb.
Yep, exactly.
And ironically, it's not Francisco's.
Francisco's my Moroni.
Oh my gosh.
I think we've said his name enough. He ought to be showing up any second now.
The shots fired.
Quite literally.
All it's missing is a pacifier on top and the muzzle.
Oh, me.
Oh my gosh. Francisco's the holiday killer.
Who'd have thought it? Who would have thought
it? It's inconceivable.
Well, we've already hit the spoiler section of the podcast, children.
What you think it means. Anyway, how are you doing, Dallas?
I am doing well. I'm always excited to be here with you guys. You guys
awesome.
are a bright spot of my day. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Gracias.
So, have you been able to come up with any additional questions to ask him for the interrogation?
Honestly, no. I think it's more of like the getting into the interrogation of the torture of what we do with guests. Dallas, now that we have solved who the holiday killer is.
Not that we'll be spoiling it on this episode until after the spoiler warning.
Exactly. Now that we understand who the holiday killer is, I don't know how to proceed with that.
You just started a question without knowing how the question was going to end.
It's ADD. It's called a thing. But no, it's like going into the world of Batman: The Long Halloween. If you were dropped in the middle of it, I think we did this last time, but if you had to bring in a Marvel character in this world to assist you, who would that be?
A Marvel character, specifically a Marvel character.
A Marvel character.
Oh, okay.
In the Long Halloween, or
no? Yeah, in the Long Halloween world.
Yeah.
In that
what Marvel character would be best to add into the Long Halloween?
Oh my goodness gracious. Man, that's a hard question because there's a lot of great individuals. There's my go-to, Cable, because he's my home dude. And, we could just time travel to the beginning of the story and take out Holiday and be done with it. So I'm going to go with that.
True.
That's true.
That's true.
All right. Well, then I've got one for you.
Okay.
Out of all the comic books you've ever read, which one that hasn't already been made into a movie would you like to see be
Good
made
one.
into a movie?
Oh, that hasn't been made into a movie. Oof, this is so difficult because there's so many great stories out there that I've read. If we were there, all right, it's not, would it be a movie? It would be a short. It would be part of a series. It would be from Batman and Robin, back in the early 2010s. And it was during the Requiem story arc where Robin died. And specifically, there's one issue in it. And what they do through Requiem is they took Batman through the stages of grief, which is really interesting. And in the first book of it, which would be the stage of denial, you see Batman just cleaning up Gotham. Like at one point, Gordon comes out on top of the actual the top of the police department building, and it's full of criminals who are tied up and everything. And he's like, oh my goodness. And there's like a note there for him or something like that, just with the bat symbol on it. And he is just running hard. Like Batman is just running hard, just doing everything he can to clean up the city. And it ends with him getting to the Batcave. And you see him have this moment where he just hits this door and out falls the Robin costume. And this is the why it would be an animated short. There are no words to the entire comic. The entire thing is you just see Bruce in this beautifully illustrated comic going through grief, trying to work out his grief by overworking. And the only words are on this little note that were from Damien, his son, apologizing basically for being a brat and letting him know that he was going to do his best to be a better son and be a better bearer of the Robin name. And you see Bruce just break holding the Robin costume. So that's what I want to see done right.
Yeah, I was about to ask which Robin because I was thinking, well, that sounds a little late for it to be Red Hood, whose name I can't think of at the moment.
Jason Todd.
Jason Todd. Thank you.
Yeah, it's Damien.
That makes the most sense because that also technically being his actual son.
Yeah, his
Exactly.
biological son. Yes.
So I've got actually an answer for this, although to some degree Marvel has already based a TV show after mine, but they added in a bunch of other stuff, and that is the Vision 2015. That's like 10. It's like 10 issues, and to some degree, WandaVision is it pulls from it a lot, but it's about the Vision living this normal life in this normal neighborhood with a synthezoid wife and 2 synthezoid kids.
Oh, that's cool.
And it starts off kind of, Stepford Housewife-ish, kind of, like you expect like in the old sitcoms where everything was perfect, nothing ever went wrong until it does, like it does in WandaVision. And it's actually a very sad story by the time you get to the end of it.
Oh man,
and it's one of the, I actually read the book before WandaVision because I suspected there might be some connection,
right?
And it actually introduced me to like 7 or 8 characters that kind of show up.
Wow.
In different ways, but also it's based on the old comics, so they bring in stuff like the fact that technically some of Wanda's family from the old country is somehow connected in with the evolutionaries' creations, like a talking cow.
Wow.
They go into it deep. It's like you're reading through this very hard, serious story, and all of a sudden, oh look, there's a giant anthropomorphic cow.
Okay.
And it takes you a second. Oh, we're in the past. This is because it was around the time their kids were growing up.
Oh, okay.
The first time before we found out they were actually spawns of Mephisto.
Wow.
They were actually Mephisto's hands. That's what they were. Weird comic, but
It
Sounds like it.
But I mean, when I say the comic, it's pulling from has some weird spots in it, but it goes through like all of Wanda's and Vision's relationships from the past couple years, and even it showed off White Vision.
Oh wow.
And I didn't know that was coming because that would have technically been during the Secret Wars event.
Yeah.
Is when that happened. Same time we got black suited Spider-Man that became Venom.
Right.
Anyway,
Right.
I would love to see an adaptation of that because it's like that story. It's one of the few comics that I actually could not put down.
Wow.
Most of the times I can put it down after I get to an issue and come back to it later and still enjoy it. This was one that's like I had to keep going. I
Yeah.
couldn't stop because I had to find out how this was going to end, and it does not end pretty. This is not end pretty.
Oh man.
That's never good, but
Tragic.
it's intriguing storytelling.
Oh yeah, it's a very good story. It's just a tragedy.
Ah,
I hate
Wow.
to spoil that much, but it is a tragedy. So, do you have one, Jacob, or shall we move on to the next question?
there again, I'm an art guy, so it's not really I read the stories, but it's like, ooh, pretty art. That's the kind. I know it's weird. I know it's very, very odd for some
Not
people.
everyone enjoys stuff in a different ways.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's just the way I enjoy comics. Be like, I will find like Jim Lee or Jessica Campbell or Joe Madureira, the guys I loved as a kid. And it's just like, oh my gosh, give me Hush, the comic.
Yeah.
I know they've already adapted that into a movie.
But actually use
just like
the actual art from it.
the art form of Jim Lee did. Now, granted, it took him like 3 years to do it, but it was like, oh my gosh, that's
But
amazing
it's
work.
Jim Stinking Lee.
Yeah, exactly. At his I'd be like, there again, his prime was X-Men #1, which is the #1 selling comic of all time, and then
Right.
you get the idea that when they did Hush, the comic, it was like the stickler was be completely utterly visual with everything. They told Jim
Right.
Lee, and he did it. And it's like, oh, no wonder it took him 3 years to make this thing because they had delays doing this thing.
Oh,
But
wow.
I'm getting on a tangent about art. But
But at the same time, they would never reproduce that art in a way that you would appreciate it in an adaptation.
no, because I saw
That's going to be part of your problem.
yeah, because I saw a preview to it, but it looks like Jim Lee's art, but it's not Jim Lee's art. Or like someone trying to adapt Battle Chasers, which is Joe Madureira's like amazing story, and it's like, but it doesn't look like Joe's stuff. I think it's just I appreciate art. I can appreciate someone's adaptation of art, but at the same time, it's like it's not the original artist. Because, like, for example, the new Battle Chasers episodes we're going into comics here, but either way, so
I got you off on a tangent you weren't expecting.
no, you didn't, but thank you. So Battle Chasers was a series that Joe Madureira did years back when he decided him and a couple other guys decided to do something with Wildstorm and did their own little imprint. And he got to issue 9 and just stopped.
Oh wow.
Just stopped because he decided to be like, oh, I want to do video game design. And he did that for years and years and years. So then when they came out with Battle Chasers Night War, which is the video game they came out with, they did a Kickstarter, and it's like, okay, if you do this tier, which is like $150 to $200, that Joe is going to do the art for issues 10, 11, 12. And so you add, like, this thing kickstarted with millions and millions of dollars to get funded like that.
Wow.
But it turns out Joe Madureira couldn't do the art because he was so busy with Steamship, his game developer.
Right.
And that made so many people mad. It was people were like, I want my money back because if Joe's not doing the art, I don't want it.
I mean, we pay
But
for
the
a
guy
product.
they're doing is Lugo. He's a Joe Madureira. He's kind of a clone, but he's got his own style. So it looks like Joe's, but it's got his own style to it. And it's like, okay, issue 10, be like, Lula's doing the art. Let's go. Because I'm more like, okay, be like, you get a simulation of what Joe Madureira would do, but at the same time, it's someone else is doing it. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not one of those be like snobs, be like, if it's not the original artist, I don't care. kind of thing. But it's more, I'd be like, I understand why Joe Madureira is not doing it.
Right.
But at the same time, be like, come on, man, just do a cover. That's all I ask you to do. Just do a cover. He'll probably wind up doing a cover, but I'm really excited. But I'm there again. Yeah, you think? I'm geeking out about every little 8-bit frame they come out with. It was like,
No
oh my
shame.
gosh, this is amazing.
No shame, bro.
There again, I'm the artist. I'm the artist that loves just art. So I see like any bit of art that's coming out of this and be like, okay, I want to buy this now. Where is
Right.
it? Come on. But yes, I digress. Yes, that's my art soapbox is over.
Which had nothing to do with the question asked. But
No,
that's fine.
that's fine.
You would have been thrown over the bridge, Jacob. In Monty Python. What's your favorite color? Let me tell you about art.
That took me a minute
I'm still like, huh? What?
for Monty Python.
Oh.
The Bridge of Death.
Oh yeah. That's what I would have thrown over.
About halfway through that, you would have been thrown over. 'Cause
Yes.
you'd have given up ever finding anything.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's ADD. It's called squirrel. Where am I going? Anyway, continue.
I don't know if I have another interrogation question. Do you?
Me either.
All right, well then let's just move into what we've been watching.
Yes.
Dallas, since you're our guest, why don't you go first? What have you been watching?
Watching, honestly, since last week when I joined you guys last, the only thing I've watched is The Long Halloween Part 2. But it's been I've been slammed. However, I did play some new video games this past weekend. I played Uncharted. I started doing it's Uncharted 1. I got the Drake collection.
Right.
Nice.
And so started playing that this weekend, and it's pretty fun. I enjoyed it. And I also played Hollow Knight, which was really fun this weekend. I did that for my friends over at Victims and Villains for their 48-hour live stream they did.
Awesome.
So, and Hollow Knight's fun. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to play it, but it's a fun little game. And what's really cool about it is there's a version you can get. I haven't looked into it yet, but like if you stream it on Twitch like I do, your audience can actually affect the game. Like they can change the gravity and cause certain power-ups to take place while you're in the middle of doing stuff. And so it becomes kind of a community event.
Nice.
That would sound interesting.
It is.
You might get frustrated in your own audience. It's like, guys, stop.
That
I
is
already
part
know
of
what
it.
it's like. And everything fell over.
That was my bad.
I got it.
Come here, Betsy. Where'd you go?
It's all right. Down there somewhere. We'll worry about that later.
I'll find him later.
There you go.
All right. Jacob, what have you been watching?
What have I been watching? So, we were able to go visit a friend of ours. He had just had surgery,
Yes.
and thankfully everything went fine. So instead of doing our normal Bible study, it was like, so what can we watch? Because we had one of our friends who is not big into anime, which is perfectly understandable.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, what can we watch? What can we watch? And so Chase brought up this movie, which is like, he said this was his favorite film of all time. And it's called Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins from 1985.
It is a interesting movie.
It is.
It's a good 80s action flick.
Yes, agreed.
But there's just enough. I haven't watched a ton of 80s action flicks, admittedly, but this one did seem a bit goofy.
Just a little bit. It gave you just enough plot to actually care about things.
Yes.
Because most time in 80s films they don't give you. It's like, oh, okay, here's your action beat.
I think
here's this and go.
I think that's because it actually was based on a book.
Yeah, it's actually based on a book. And I was very shocked by that. I was like, wait, they're actually giving you a plot
Wow.
in an 80s action movie? Wait, huh?
Those happen
But some
sometimes.
of this is more like it makes no sense. Except
Oh,
for
you mean like the incredibly smart dogs who knew how to lower
oh
a
my
ladder?
gosh, the Dobermans. The Dobermans in this movie were great because
We're sitting there watching this, and Remo is running along this catwalk essentially, and one dog jumps up and grabs the edge of this ladder with his teeth,
and the other one,
and the other one jumps up and grabs the other one, and
Pulls
it's
it
just enough that they lower it down. And I'm sitting there going, I don't think any dog I've ever looked at was that patient to wait for his friend to grab the other one to their wake and pull it down. Not to mention the fact that at that point, you could tell those dog heads were
They're puppets.
hand puppets.
They're hand puppets. But the one that just broke me, it was the one where Remo is like, he walks across this little tightrope just to get across, and you're like, there's no way. Because I'm thinking, like, everyone in the room's thinking, like, there's no way this dog can do that. It's like, dogs can do that. So this,
No.
you know, this little dog is like walking across this tightrope.
If you remember, I said, you said, someone said that dog's not going to walk across that tightrope. I said, they doesn't need to walk across the tightrope. As super powered as these dogs are, they can leap that distance.
That is true, but it was so funny. And then you had the master who was just like,
the Korean master.
The Korean master. Oh my gosh, this
master of the kung fu that all the other kung fus are descended from.
Yes.
According to the story.
Yeah, Chun, played by Joel Grey.
I don't know his name.
Yeah, that's the actor's name is Joel Grey. But he does such an excellent job. He's like serious guy, doesn't crack jokes at all. Like just does all these great one-liners, and the fact that the woman who plays Captain Janeway,
Kate Mulgrew plays the love interest, and she is in full Janeway mode the entire movie. To the point where half the time she was getting ready to go do something, and I just went into my Janeway impressions. I might need to go find some coffee.
And there's one moment in particular where our main hero he's Wonder Dog because he's gonna go save the day, and Janeway or Kate Mulgrewn's character is sitting there. She's talking her head off about something, and Chung just literally grabs her by the neck. She goes,
Lesson number 34. We never saw past lesson 5, technically.
No, we didn't. But then Drew said something very like a certain character wish he would have known that group.
I said, I bet Chakotay wished he knew that move.
Oh my
god!
gosh.
When I'm watching a movie that is that ridiculous, it doesn't matter how good it is. I have 2 little robots talking in the back of my head.
Fair.
I grew up watching Mystery Science Theater 3000.
There's no shame with that.
No, there's not. We watched that and just like, okay, that was interesting. That was funny. I actually posted on my my letterbox, so that was funny. And then I started watching season 2 of MacGyver, and it's just like I love MacGyver. I always have loved MacGyver.
Right.
And so I started watching season 2. And season 2 is really good because you have season 1 where it looks like the writers and director really didn't know where they were going with this because MacGyver changes so often throughout season 1. And so by the end of season 1, we've kind of established, okay, he's part of the Phoenix Corporation and he works for not Mac, but he works for his like a freelance spy or some freelance agent.
Right.
And by season 2, this is all fleshed out, which is like, okay. Because most of them, like, stories have, for the most part, figured out what their story is. MacGyver took all of season 1 to figure this all out. But I still love MacGyver, no matter what.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to watch all of, I think, 7 seasons and, like, three TV movies or something like that. But it's just like I love MacGyver. The fact that I carry around a Swiss Army knife just because of that. So yeah, I'm currently going through season 2 of MacGyver. So what have you been watching, Drew?
Well, I tried out a new anime the other day.
Oh.
Funimation only has 1 episode dubbed so far, but it is called I Was Banished from the Hero's Party, so I decided to live a quiet life in the country.
That's a name.
Or something to that effect.
What is with these titles?
That's the thing. I see a title like that. First thought that pops in my mind, okay, it's an isekai. I bet you the guy's got run over in his real life by the isekai truck of good fortune, and now is reborn in this, but it's been a couple years, and like, nope, that's not actually what... He's not reborn. It's not like reincarnated as a slime. Mm-hmm. It is literally... He's in a world where video game logic does reign, but... No, he's only overpowered in where he is because he's in a beginner town. And he was like 3/4 of the way through the party before they kicked him out. And my understanding is they'll learn pretty quickly that was a mistake.
Right.
But it's an interesting story so far. I've only seen the 1 episode. I don't know quite where it's going yet, but where it started, I thought it feels like it's an interesting take on an isekai by cutting out most of the stuff of isekais that are dull and overplayed at this point,
Mm-hmm.
and actually doing what we all came here to do is to see how is this guy who's slightly overpowered gonna get through the day. So I appreciated that, and then I watched episode 6 of Way of the House Husband after I
Yes.
found out there was 5 more episodes.
Come on.
I enjoyed what I saw, but episode 6 was not the best episode. I don't know if maybe I wasn't in the mood, or the first part of it where he's gets dragged up on stage on a essentially a Pretty Cure play. That was funny. But the rest of the episode is like, this feels like you're retreading.
When he started doing the tea ceremony, I died.
Yes,
I was
that was hilarious.
done, man.
Because here's the thing: it's not that him doing that is hilarious. It's the fact that I've been on stage. I know what it's like when you've got a set thing you're supposed to do, and I can just imagine how lost all 3 of those actors were during that entire sequence. And I watched a little bit more Cowboy Bebop. Game-wise, I have firmly gotten back into Final Fantasy XIV. Kind of need to get caught up before the end of November, considering the new expansions coming out, which I just forced Jacob to watch the trailer for, even though he has no context for anything in that trailer.
It was gloriously good.
Yeah, it's a great trailer. You should go give that a shot. The expansion's called Endwalker. Just look for the US trailer. It's a good little trailer. But I've been playing a little bit of that. I've played a little bit more of my 100% try of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And I played maybe the first 30 minutes last night of Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy before I forced myself to go to bed. Because
I heard
it was
it's
already
good.
late.
Like, I heard that's really good.
This game's good so far. So I'll suggest that once it goes on sale for you, Dallas.
Sweet.
If you're looking for another new game.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's essentially what I've been watching and playing. Do we have news?
No, we don't actually.
Really?
Yeah, no news to speak of.
Well, I suppose no news is good news.
Right.
At least nothing's getting delayed again.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Hey, for a while that was all the news we had.
Agreed.
So I guess we should go ahead and jump into our spoiler-free review of Batman: The Long Halloween Part 2. I am going to go ahead and say that since this is Part 2, at this point, Part 1 spoilers are allowed.
Right.
So if you have not... So I'm going to go ahead and drop a semi-spoiler warning for Part 1. So if you've not seen Part 1, we thank you for joining us on this part of the show.
Right.
Pause us, come back to us once you've seen Part 1. Listen to the other episode before you listen to this one.
Mm-hmm.
And then come back once you've seen Part 2 for the rest of the show.
Yes.
Anyway, Dallas, spoiler-free thoughts on Part 2.
So Part 2 really seems to have amped up the action of the story itself. And it seemed to be more engaging that way for me. Like, there seemed to be more action. It pops right out the gate with it, like with the fighting and the action, and it was pretty steady all the way through, I thought. I mean, obviously it carries over the same art style, but what I appreciated though was if you were to take out the outro and the intro of the movies, you just cut them together and it would be like it was one seamless film. And I appreciate that.
There's a good reason for that, because apparently next year they are releasing a cut of both these films where it's all edited as one movie.
Yeah. So I think
So
they
they
did that with The
obviously
Dark
left room for
Knight too. And sometimes you watch the story and like it seems like there's like some sort of change that takes over with the art or the direction of things. This felt like a cohesive story. Like, even though the action was ramped up, it was like, we are definitely in the same world. The story is continuing. Buckle up. Something's gonna go wild.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Jacob, your spoiler-free thoughts.
I would something that's very similar to Dallas. The idea that the action is very much more ramped up in this movie. The suspension of who the holiday killer is even more there. If that makes any sense.
Well, it starts becoming more pressing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it becomes very. Yeah, I completely agree. It gives you. It's like, okay, we think we figured it out. Then it's like, no, and it's very similar to part one where Batman ourselves figured out, oh, it's this character, he did it, and then the holiday killer kills this character.
Right.
And it's like, oh, okay, we're back to square one. and
then after credits scene just kind of throws everything for a loop.
Yeah, pretty much. I was like, wait, what? They brought in
her?
Really?
Like, I did say part one spoilers are
yes,
allowed for this.
Yes.
It's Poison Ivy.
Yes.
She shows up and it's like, okay, what are they going to do with her?
I got a spell on you.
This is not Hocus Pocus.
Such a good movie.
It is a good movie.
I can remember to watch that this month. But
you got a week.
Yeah.
You got 1 week, man. Pull this off.
That's true. It's not hard. All right. So yeah, that's my definite spoiler-free explanation of
Thoughts on it?
Yeah, there we go. I'm so scatterbrained today. How about you?
Really?
You think?
Anyway, my spoiler-free thoughts on it. It is, like we've been saying, it is a continuation of the part one story. That little bit of a thrown for a loop is nice because at least it gives you some suspense. I've got some other thoughts on that later. But, and bear in mind, I know this can be edited easily into one whole movie. I'm still kind of looking at it as two separate films. But this was just a nice conclusion to the story. I thought the origin story of one particular character who can be seen on the cover of the movie
Yep, that is
was
true.
done very well. I appreciated that, and I liked how we see how we get into one of his items I never really thought too much about, but we actually see why that's important, not just in his life, but also in Bruce's.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. So yeah, that's my spoiler-free thoughts on A Long Halloween Part 2. Bear in mind, while the first one was PG-13, this one's rated R.
I was going to bring that up. And it's rated R because of the violence and the
Yes.
some of the
It is
blood.
a lot more violent.
And so, depending on who you are and your particular standards on things, just be aware of that. This is not. I think last time we talked, we said maybe your teenagers could watch this. When we were talking about that, I would really make sure they're a little bit more mature and they can handle violence and some of the more gory scenes of the film. Especially when the box art cover guy first shows up because it's kind of gruesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
But overall, I don't think it's a terrible film. Because sometimes when they're like, "Oh, it's rated R," and it just gets dumb. You know what I'm saying? You're like, "What?" There's no reason for what they've added into it. Everything makes sense that takes place in this film.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of that's because this is actually a cohesive story. It is really does feel like it's designed to be one story, not two separate projects that happen to be split. And you can't say that about many two-part things. I mean, one of my favorite two-parters of any media whatsoever, the Star Trek Next Generation episode, The Best of Both Worlds, the first one is 10 times better than the second one because the second one they kind of wrote because of how good the first one was. And you can tell because they couldn't figure out how to write themselves out of a couple corners. And they kind of went a little cheap. But I appreciate that it's one cohesive story. So I guess we need to go ahead and drop the spoiler warning here. Join us on the other side. All right, and the bumpers. I got to run the bumpers too.
Of course.
You'd think this is my first podcast. It's not. I just get sidetracked. Join us on the other side of the bumpers, and we'll get to spoiling this thing. Don't forget that you can download. Don't forget that you can. Don't forget that you can listen to us record the podcast live every Tuesday over on our Facebook page, The Cellcast, our Twitch channel, The Cellcast Gaming, and on YouTube at Cellcast. Also, don't forget to join our Patreon if you would like to support us monetarily. At $1, you'll get our everlasting thanks. At our $5 tier, you can get some artwork from Jacob. And at our $10 tier, you can get bloopers for every episode we've released that I've remembered to release them for. And you can get commentaries from different movies. So come check us out over there if you would like to support us financially. This podcast is part of the Culture Box Media Network. For more great content like this, go to the website in the description. There you will find other great shows such as Geek Devotions, which is a collaboration of devoted geeks that are devoted to letting people know that they are loved. They produce a weekly geek culture infused devotional, their podcast Com Talk, and written articles, all designed to encourage and challenge people in the geek community, bridging the gap between their faith and their geekdoms. You can find their content specifically at geekdevotions.com. Do you like trivia shows but wish you could stay a little longer with the contestants? Do you wish that if those contestants didn't know the answer from memory, they could Google the answers? Do you love finding out how many of certain objects fit between the Earth and the Moon? And do you want a game show that is completely unfair? Then might I suggest the Raw Quiz Show, where Ryan Ashley Wall pits and competes against 5 different combatants each season to see who is the true trivia champion. And you can find it over at Pop Americana, which the podcast you're listening to is also a part of. Go to the link in the description to find out more. Ba-da-dum, bum 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 ba-da-dum. The following is a spoiler-filled review for Batman: The Long Halloween Part 2. She is the vengeance man. He's the knight, so you better watch out. Listener discretion's advised. Batman: The Long Halloween Part 2 was once again directed by Chris Palmer, who directed Voltron: Legendary Defender, and it was written once again by Tim Sheridan, who also wrote Scooby-Doo and the Curse of the 13th Ghost. And it was once again based on the graphic novel by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. Getting into the cast, I'm going to quit saying once again, just so you know, some of these are the same people from part
once
one.
again?
Yeah, once again. That might be the name of this episode now. Jensen Ackles is Batman and Bruce Wayne. And, of course, he played Dean Winchester in Supernatural. Josh Duhamel played Harvey Dent and Two-Face. And in the Taco Bell Web of Fries commercial...
Oh, my gosh.
He played the hero and Clara's father, which is technically the same character from 2 different commercials. Naya Rivera, once again, played Catwoman and Selena Kyle in her final acting role in this movie. And, of course, she was Santana Lopez in Glee. Troy Baker returned as the Joker for 3 lines.
Yes.
And all of them in the background. But he was voiced, he also voiced Kanji Tatsumi in Persona 4. First new actor in this, Layla Berzins, was the voice of Sophia Falcone. Mm-hmm. And in the video game River City Girls, she played the first boss, Misuzu.
Really?
Yeah, kind of a gorilla of a girl.
So she plays big women.
Apparently.
Ah.
Apparently. Billy Burke is once again Commissioner Gordon, and of course he was Charlie Swan in Twilight. Zach Collison played young Bruce Wayne, and he is the voice of Steven Universe in the television show Steven Universe.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Elisa Diaz played Renee Montoya, and in the 2012 remake of Red Dawn, she played Julie. John DiMaggio played the Mad Hatter, and in Adventure Time, he is Jake the dog, but I know him as Bender Bending Rodriguez in Futurama.
Oh, Futurama.
David Dalmatian, which once again, I apologize that I'm probably saying your last name wrong, but he played Calendar Man, and of course he was Polka Dot Man in The Suicide Squad. Robin Atkin Downs was the voice of the Scarecrow and Thomas Wayne, not the same character. Two different characters there. And in Star Wars, I think in Clone Wars Rebels and one of the newer shows, I can't remember which one, he is the voice of, and I just lost it on here, Cham Syndulla in Star Wars.
Oh.
Okay. I have no idea who that is.
Do you know the Twi'lek pilot in Rebels?
Yeah.
Her father.
Oh, okay.
Alistair Duncan is playing Alfred Pennyworth. And of course, he was Sullivan Brimbor in the Middle-earth Lord of the Rings games. Gary Leroy Gray is playing Pierce again, and he was AJ in The Fairly Odd Parents. Amy Landecker is once again Barbara Gordon, and she was Barbara in Troll Hunters. Julie Nathanson was Gilda Dent. Are we safe here to actually do a spoiler, you think?
Yeah.
And the Holiday Killer.
Dun, dun, dun.
And she was Holly Tuell in Final Fantasy 15. Jim Peary, who is the voice of Sal Maroni, was the voice of King Regis Lucius Callum in Final Fantasy 15. Katie Sackhoff was the voice of Poison Ivy, and along with Star Wars: The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, in Star Wars: The Mandalorian, she plays Bo-Katan.
Okay.
You haven't gotten to her because you still haven't watched season 2.
Exactly.
What?
Yeah.
Loser.
I know. I'm behind.
He doesn't have Disney Plus because he doesn't have internet.
You
have Disney Plus.
I have
but
Disney Plus.
You don't have internet.
Yeah.
So you can't watch it on your nice big TV.
Yeah.
Let's just pause the podcast. We'll just take a break. Everyone go watch it right now. You're already at Drew's crib. He's got it clearly.
Yeah, I've got 4K. We can watch it in glorious HD.
I can wait. I can wait to finish this
HDR.
podcast.
Yeah,
Just
HDR.
a couple of hours. Yeah, we'll come back to it.
Yeah, it's only going to take us 5 hours.
Yeah, we'll do it in the morning time, guys. 5
Right.
a.m.
Right.
But Fred Cottesior, who was the voice of Solomon Grundy, was in this one.
Bored on a Monday.
And the whole kit and caboodle.
Yes.
And in Star Trek Lower Decks, he is the voice of Lieutenant Shax, my favorite angry Bajoran. If you have not I'm guessing, Dallas, you've not watched Lower Decks yet.
I have not.
You need to. It's funny.
It's fun. It's
Okay.
fun.
It takes itself just seriously that it can be in canon, but it takes itself just not seriously enough that it's really fun.
I'll have to check
I
it out.
can't explain any better than that. I work under the thought process that what we're watching is actually like a hollow novel based on these characters' actual lives. So there's a real story back there, but it's based on their their log entries.
Right.
And so it goes off on these weird tangents because that's what the log entry talked about because they're lower deck people.
Right.
And then last but not least, Titus Welliver was the voice of Carmine Falcone, and in Harry Bosch, he played Harry Bosch in Bosch. I've still not watched that show.
Me
I
either.
have no idea.
So, Kingdom Hearts connections. John DiMaggio, who was the Mad Hatter in this, played Jacoby, one of the zombie pirates in the Pirates of the Caribbean world in Kingdom Hearts.
Okay.
Robin Atkin Downs, who was the voice of Scarecrow, is both the voice of Davy Jones from Kingdom Hearts 3,
Mm-hmm.
and Luxord, a recurring character throughout the series.
Hmm.
Layla Burnsens was the voice of Sophia Falcone, and she has additional voices in Kingdom Hearts. And then once again, Fred Tatasciore, who is Solomon Grundy, played Kevin, Flynn, and Clue in the grid level of Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. And yeah, that's it.
Okay.
And so what do we got in info and stuff?
All right. So most of the info stuff is basically what I referred to on last episode. So if you want more of that information, please go to the last episode and listen to that information. But for updates, again, it is available on HBO Max if you're subscription to that. It is an IMDb score of 7.2 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes. That is a score of 100. And it was released on July 27th, 2021. And yeah, there is no sequel to this
Yet.
yet.
There's
Far as
only
I
like-
understand.
This was
No.
the last DC animated movie released at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's not
Yes.
been another one because this thing just came out, what, a couple months ago?
Yeah, a couple of months
Or
ago.
a couple days ago?
Yeah, it came out in
Weeks ago?
July. Yeah, it came out in July.
Oh, July.
I want
Yeah,
the new
I know
Dark
there's
Victory.
I know there's a comic that is a direct sequel to The Long Halloween. I just don't remember what that is.
It's the Dark Victory.
Dark Victory. Okay, thank you.
And then there's one that takes place in the midst of Long Halloween, but they ignored a essential plot point in this movie that comic book is no longer. It wouldn't make sense for them to do that comic.
Ah.
Gotcha. All right, good deal. So that's all I have for info and stuff.
Okay.
Short and sweet to the point.
Oh, nice when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike probably all 4 of next month's.
Oh gosh, that's gonna be fun.
Getting into the summary. In the 3 months since Alberto's death, the Holiday Killer has targeted the Falcone and Moroni families on Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, and April Fool's Day. Meanwhile, Bruce has signed much of his assets over to Falcone under Poison Ivy's influence. Catwoman defeats Ivy and rescues Bruce. Yeah, it was a bit of a cat fight, wasn't it? Ow. On Mother's Day, Scarecrow escapes from Arkham Asylum. When Batman intervenes, Scarecrow injects him with his fear-inducing toxin, forcing him to relive the night of his parents' murder. Catwoman finds Batman in an alleyway and brings him home. Falcone's daughter, Sophia, asks for a seat at the family table, but Falcone refuses. Gordon and Dent question Bruce about Holiday, citing his family's past connections with Falcone. Bruce recalls how, as a boy, he met Falcone when his father saved his life following an assassination attempt by the Moronis. On Father's Day, Moroni's father, Luigi, is murdered by Holiday. Catwoman witnesses Falcone paying a mob hitman in the cemetery. Moroni meets with Dent and agrees to testify against Falcone in exchange for immunity. On the 4th of July, Batman is captured by Scarecrow and Mad Hatter as they rob a bank for Falcone. He escapes and defeats them as they drop off the cash in the cemetery. On the boardwalk, Falcone's hitman attacks Dent and Gilda during the fireworks display. Catwoman intervenes, but the hitman knocks out both her and Dent. Dent awakens to find the hitman dead and one of Holiday's guns nearby, and he flees as the police arrive. Falcone's sister, Carla Vitti, publicly accuses Dent of being Holiday. While Dent has Moroni in court, Batman meets Gordon and reveals that he found Holiday's guns in Dent's basement. In the middle of court, Moroni accuses Dent of being Holiday and throws acid in his face. Dent is hospitalized, but escapes and is picked up by Falcone's men. Dent kills his guards and flees into the sewers where he is nurtured by Solomon Grundy. On Falcone's birthday, Carla is killed by Holiday. On Labor Day, Dent and Grundy attack Moroni's prison convoy. Batman, disguised as Moroni's guard, subdues Grundy, but Moroni is shot by Holiday from another building. Dent, Grundy, and Holiday escape. At Wayne Manor, Alfred prepares for another Halloween while Bruce questions his motives for fighting crime. Alfred reassures him that regardless of his parents' connections to the mob, they would have been proud of him. Batman asks Catwoman about her obsession with the Falcone family. She confesses that Falcone is her father, and she only wants to know her mother's name. Dent and Grundy attack Arkham and free several inmates. Poison Ivy, Scarecrow, and Mad Hatter engage the GCPD, while Dent, Grundy, Joker, and Penguin attack Falcone's building. They overwhelm Falcone's guards, and Sophia and Dent prepare to flip a coin to decide whether Falcone will live or die. Batman and Catwoman arrive and defeat the rogues, but are unable to prevent Dent from shooting Falcone. Distraught, Sophia falls out the broken window to her death. Catwoman reveals her face to Falcone, who says Louisa before dying in Batman's arms. Dent, now under the alias Two-Face, turns himself over to Gordon and claims responsibility for all the holiday killings. In the Dent's basement, Gilda burns her holiday items while Batman looks on. She confesses that Falcone had annulled her marriage to Alberto and had their illegitimate child aborted. As Holiday, she exacted revenge against the entire family. Though unrepentant, she assures Batman that Holiday is finished. On Halloween, Wayne Manor receives the first trick-or-treater. In a post-credits scene, Flash and Green Arrow also arrive at the front door. For almost no apparent reason as far as the movie's concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Saying that as someone who's not read any of the comics surrounding this one.
It's probably more a time to be like, hey, there's another adventure coming.
Justice League something. I don't know. This is, like I said earlier, getting into the trivia, Naya Riviera's final film role, as she unfortunately died from drowning, I believe.
Yeah.
This will be the 5th animated Batman movie to receive an R rating after Batman the Killing Joke, Batman Gotham by Gaslight, Batman Death in the Family, and Batman Soul of the Dragon. So nobody else does anything worthy of being rated R but Batman?
Apparently,
I mean, if you
he's
look
the
at
Dark
all the
Knight.
If you look at all the all Batman stories, like they lend themselves to being darker, more adult themed. Superman stories, I mean, there's so much air to them. It wouldn't make sense for them to turn out to be an R-rated film.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah, I think the what was it, Justice League?
Someone should tell Zack Snyder that.
Yeah, what was it? Justice League Apocalypse War was rated R.
This only listed those 5 movies.
Yeah,
and they're all Batman movies.
yeah, 'cause I know those two.
I bet Injustice might be rated R when it comes out.
Yeah, probably. One would think.
I mean, the game is rated M. That it's technically, well, it's going to be based on the comic, which is based on the game.
Right.
This is as bad as 300.
So yeah, Apocalypse War is rated R.
Okay. So my trivia is not exactly accurate. Who's surprised by this? Unlike other Batman movies, Alfred refers to Mr. Wayne as Sir and not Master Bruce. This will be Katie Sackhoff's 5th project based on a comic book, her 3rd DC project, and her 2nd animated Batman movie after portraying a 2099 version of Black Cat in Spider-Man Edge of Time, Detective Sarah Essen in Batman Year One, She-Hulk in the Superhero Squad show, and Amunet Blacksmith in The Flash. The Riddler is in the comic this film is based on, and was confronted by Holiday on April Fool's Day, and was left alive. Hence the pun, April Fools. His appearance was left out of the film. In the comic story that this is based on, Alberto Falcone was revealed to be Holiday.
Dun, dun, dun.
He confesses to his father that his new reputation as Holiday makes him much bigger than him and all the gangsters in the mob put together. Alberto then tells his father that the days of the mob controlling Gotham are over and that freaks like himself will be the ones to control the city's fate from now on. Also, Gilda Dent claims that she was Holiday because she wanted to try to end Falcone's hold on Gotham and reduce her husband's workload so that they would have time together. She has the wild suspicion that Alberto was lying, instead choosing to believe that Dent himself had taken up the killings on New Year's Eve and that the two were finally working together, sharing secrets together. Nevertheless, she is content with Alberto as their scapegoat, knowing the authorities are incapable of finding the other Holiday killer without Dent on their side. Knowing that Dent is not really insane and can be cured. Gilda states that she still believes in Harvey Dent. In the film, Gilda confesses to Batman that she was Holiday. because she wanted revenge against Carmine Falcone for breaking up her first marriage to her son, Alberto, and forcing her to have an abortion, which ruined her life. She married Dent knowing that she could set her revenge plot against Falcone. Batman doesn't take her in, leaving her fate ambiguous for now. So on that sad note, and this is probably the first time I've said anything about abortion on this show, and I've had to say it twice. Dallas, what is your first like for this?
My first like for it is actually the nightmare scene with when he first runs into Scarecrow. I thought it was really I thought it was really well illustrated. Like as soon as the gas hit him, you had it. It was the same style, but the way they did it, there was like a shift in it where it was really dramatic and very interesting, and it felt differently. There was like a grain to the whole thing, and then going over to where the end of the nightmare scene where he's in Crime Alley and he's reliving the death of his parents. I thought that was a great way of cresting off of that terror into just the somberness of what he truly fears, which is not being able to stop this type of thing from happening again.
Jacob, your first like?
My first like would actually be mine. I'd be like at first it was gonna be like the continuing story, but that's more of a given. It's really really well done. The performance of Jason Ackles. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his name right. His performance as Batman definitely is. Dallas just described the nightmare scene. It's the fact be like he comes up to Alfred and be like, "Where's mom? Where's mom?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh!"
I was
like
broken.
that was moving. That was like, "Oh my gosh!" And Eccleston just did an amazing job with that. Like the sense of vulnerability and brokenness, and like a young boy looking for his mother. And it's just more like it crushed, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" The fact to be like he's gone back to the night his parents died. He's relived that, and like he's wanting his mother, and like this was on Mother's Day, if I remember correctly. In the chronologically, it was during Mother's Day, and I'm like, that was just beautiful. And Ackerson just killed it. And like he does an amazing job. The voice talent in this movie is incredible. But Eccleston does an amazing job of his emotional range in here, where you'd be like you get the like extremely angry, very emotional. You get the Dark Knight where it's just like everything's smooth and be like the emotions level, but then you get those highs and lows of the emotion. It's just like, oh my gosh, it's like bravo Eccleston, very good job,
Right.
incredible job.
My first like is actually that it's more of the same from part one. The fact that you can literally put, and they're designed to flow from one movie to the other. You cut out the credits from movie one and the closing credits from movie one and the opening credits from movie two, and just smack them right together, and you've got the continuation of the story.
Yes.
And it works beautifully that way. You get the same art style. Unfortunately, you get the same animation style, but I'll talk about that later.
Yes.
And you get the mystery moves cleanly throughout the whole thing. You're still trying to figure out who the holiday killer is. There's points from the first part that finally start coming. There are things in the first movie that kind of felt like weird. Why would you include this? Because you wouldn't include it in a standalone film, but they pay off here, and I appreciated that. I appreciate how we finally get to go into some backstory between the Falcones and the Waynes, because we really didn't get a chance to go into that in the first part, but we got to go through it here. It really feels like we're watching the second half of one movie, and I appreciate that they go to that much trouble, because nothing says they had to do that. They literally could have done part one and come back years later and do part two, and for not been able to get half the people back, because that's how this stuff works. And I can very easily see Warner Brothers doing this, but thankfully they did it. They were smart and pulled a Lord of the Rings and did all of this at one time.
Right.
And I appreciate that.
Agreed.
Dallas, what's your second like?
My second like like you, I struggle with the art style. But there are key moments where the art style looks really, really smooth and great with certain scenes. The Catwoman and Ivy fight, it worked really well, especially right at the front end. The ending fight where Batman and Catwoman are fighting the Rogues Gallery in that dark cloud. I really enjoyed those scenes. Artistically, they looked great. Like they felt like this is what Batman should be. And I've
That's
mentioned this before.
definitely where most of the money was spent.
Right? But I said this before, I struggle with this art style. This new DC animated universe, I really dislike it, and I really disliked it in the Superman. But I think this art style lends itself more to darker scenes and darker characters. So it works a little bit smoother here, and in those scenes specifically, it really shined.
All right. I'll be getting into more of that later because I have some opinions.
Yeah.
Jacob, what's your second like?
My second like it merges with the concluding the not concluding but the
After credit scene?
after the credit scene, but the fact that we get more of a like obviously we in part 1 we get to know Harvey Dent, we know something's going on, something's amiss with him. If you didn't know who Harvey Dent was in the first place, now you start to really understand. It's like, okay, as his wife says in the end, at the very end of the film, it's like Dent had not been broken by this world, and you see that brokenness. You see a man who is under the strain and pressures of the world, and the fact that it's implied that he was the arm behind the holiday killer. But it's this constant stress of the inner demons, and the fact that the Two-Face emerges through that with the acid thrown into his face. And I'm just like, the storytelling is amazing of his transformation into Two-Face, and I thought it was very well done, very well executed. And there's so many little moments where it's like Harvey starts hearing Two-Face, and it's like, oh, okay, that's where they're playing with it. It's like he's in the court and hears Two-Face and be like, kill them all and all that. I'm like, oh, okay, this is really cool. Now, granted,
He's already going crazy.
he's already going crazy. But like, this was a man who just wanted to do justice, and a man who's had buried all of his problems and allowed those problems to manifest into another personality, or what we understand is another personality. It's not really another personality. It's more of it's another side of their personality coming out, but it's not another person. It's not another person, but it's a persona they have built to protect themselves in some kind of capacity. So the idea of a dual personality really exists, but it's more if someone goes through a tremendous amount of trauma, be like they will build a like almost like a psychic wall to protect themselves, and that wall will become a character to them. And so they'll play out that character to protect themselves. So in this way, it's more his psychosis, and that wall he's built up had become Two-Face. And so I found that really fascinating how they approached that, how they approached how Two-Face emerged, because we knew Two-Face his dark side was there, because we'd see a glimpse of it every once in a while, definitely in the first one, and definitely in the second, more pronounced in the second one. And I just love the fact to be like we get the classic acid in the left side of his face, and that is the immersion of the supervillain Two-Face. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. I thought it was very fascinating. So yeah, mine is the immersion of Two-Face.
My second like is I like how the mystery slowly unfolded.
Yes.
Because here's the thing. Normally, when I watch movies or read books or really enjoy any entertainment whatsoever, I am cursed with being about 5 steps ahead of the of the characters generally most of the time. So normally I would have had, like I said, I thought I knew who the murderer was at the end of the last movie.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know who they were going to make the murderer until like 5 seconds before they revealed who it was. I was like, that makes so much sense that it's Gilda Dent.
Yeah.
I didn't follow it at first, but it even goes back to the fact that the guns, yeah, they have the baby bottle nipples over it as a makeshift silencer, but really that goes back to how she feels about them forcing her to kill her baby.
Yeah.
She's now killing them with baby paraphernalia.
Yeah.
It's like that is. I'm sure the baby bottle thing was in the original comic.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be there for the same reason. I don't know. But the fact that that's how they used it here, I thought was genius.
Oh, agreed.
And I like how, in many ways, Batman... Well, what it reminded me of is the end of Murder on the Orient Express. Not to reveal, not to spoil that if you've not read the book or seen any of the, 3 movies at this point. But when Poirot figures out who the killer is in that book and in those movies, he doesn't take them in.
Yeah.
Much like Batman doesn't take Gilda in here because in many ways he can't say he wouldn't do the same thing in some ways. Maybe not go through it the way she did.
Yeah.
But he can understand her point of view.
I
And maybe that's just now she's no longer a danger, so he's not as worried.
I think
Or is
yes,
she?
but at the same time, I think it's more the fact that because he ends up with saying Harvey was my friend, and he understood that Harvey was taking in this story. Harvey was taking the blame of Holiday Killer to protect Gilda, and so
Yes.
this was his final. This is his
Devotion
final
or-
way of going, Harvey. This is me showing you my friendship. I'm not going to let your wife
Yeah.
take the blame for this.
Even though she technically should have
Yeah.
taken the blame for it.
Yeah.
Plus, maybe he's also thinking after, because he's seen all the people he's thrown into Arkham. She being in Arkham is probably not a good idea. Because it seems like people go crazier in Arkham Asylum than they get cured.
Yeah.
To be fair, she'd probably end up in Blackgate before she ends up in Arkham.
True. But either way, she's a very tragic character, and I appreciate that it is the person I least suspected, because from the first time she shows up in the first movie, I'm thinking this is the puppy dog character that needs to be protected. She's the one who's probably going to accidentally get killed in the third act that's going to cause Two-Face to go crazy.
Yeah.
That's what I was half expecting. But the fact that, she is the murderer and Two-Face is protecting her by taking the blame on himself, that's different. And I appreciate that. I don't know if that's how it was in the comic, because I know the comic had different endings, and I'm sure you could tell me a lot later. And I do plan on reading this later.
Please do. It's a fantastic
To
book.
see what this is like, but it'll have to be after December 15th. When I won't get points taken away because I bought something.
Unless Jacob buys it for you.
I already have it.
You may have to let me borrow it. Sure. But then I still can't count that because it's a borrow. Anyway, if I remember y'all's rules correctly. Anywho, that is my second like for this, which means we need to go into our dislikes, and I'm going to have to pull the host card and claim the first dislike for this one because
I'm anxious to hear this.
I have thoughts. So we talked about
Fire away, Captain.
I'm not the captain. You are the leader of this thing. You're just allowing me to run the engineering panel over here.
Okay, Scotty.
I don't think she can do it, Captain. You kind of changed the laws of physics.
And yet Gilda did. Oh, wait. We're getting into my spoiler.
Somehow she did.
Some of that I kind of wonder how she pulled off, to be honest, because she does not look anything like the Holiday Killer we
No,
see
she
throughout the
doesn't.
movie.
You're getting into my dislike. Stop it.
Sorry, I'll go into my dislike. My dislike for this. It's going to take me a little bit to build into it, so bear with me. We talked earlier about how this animation style, we talked about it even in part 1, how we're not really fans of this animation style.
No.
I like the art of it, but the actual animation, how they move it around, is not that good. It feels cheap.
Mm-hmm.
That
But I
opening
got to
scene.
thinking about it.
That
The what?
opening scene wherever Ivy
gosh,
and Bruce.
yes.
I was like, what is happening? I thought my Blu-ray player was glitching.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I got to pondering this. What is it about the art style I don't like? Not the art style, the animation style I don't like. Well, I don't like that it feels stiff, for one thing.
Makes sense.
And admittedly, since 2004, I believe, you can pretty much assume anything made after that is not using cell animation. It is digital animation at that point. And stiffness in animation is almost inherent with vector animation, which is kind of what this is using, is vector style animation.
Mm-hmm.
I can't complain about that too much because based off it being vector animation, because I've seen vector animation look 10 times, 100 times better than this. So it's not that it's vector animation that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that it's digital, because I've seen digital stuff look better than this.
Right.
I think what I don't like about this is that it's full of lazy decisions. And that's really my dislike, is like almost every... There's a couple spots where, like we said, the fight scenes with Poison Ivy and the fight scenes at the end are beautifully done, but there's also a lot of scenes where they are almost going as cheap. They're cutting as many corners as they can to get past these dialogue scenes in a lot of cases. And that culminates in my actual dislike, because all of the shortcuts took to them making obvious CG horse show up in this movie.
Yes.
First off, I have questions as to why Arkham Asylum, a place filled with super criminals who are crazy, why they have horses on the ground at all.
Equestrian therapy.
I'll go with that.
That works.
Admittedly, that makes sense, but I'll go with it. But the thing is, they obviously did not know how to animate this horse in their cheap art style, cheap animation style. So what do? They make a 3D horse and they try to make him look 2D, but there's way too many times where his cheap animation style doesn't match everyone else's cheap animation style, and it kind of does a space. What I think of, maybe using the wrong terms here, but it kind of makes you undergo like a spatial dysphoria where he's 3D, but everything else is 2D. And in other times where we've seen obvious 3D stuff done in 2D, like the cart in Emperor's New Groove, the clock tower in the Great Mouse Detective.
Yeah.
Right.
Those it works, and I'm mostly impressed with it because it fits the art style of what they're doing. Yes, it's the only way they could have produced this, and yeah, it stands out a little bit, but it was in the past. The technology was still growing. We are in 2021, and we have a CG horse that looks worse than the clock tower and Great Mouse Detective.
Wow. Yeah, agreed.
What is going on here?
Do you think
Because
that's why
here's the
there was
thing: if
this
they'd have
weird
made it
shift?
fit better, I would live with it. I wouldn't care. If it only showed up when Batman was under Scarecrow's fear toxin, and this was some strange fear-induced hallucination of this 3D horse in the 2D, I could live with that because I can rationalize that. This horse is 3D throughout the whole stinking movie, no matter how Batman's feeling.
Agreed.
Right.
And I'm still looking at it going, why? Why did you take such a cheap route with this horse? And I know this is a stupid thing to get hung up on, but that is the most offensive animation I've seen in a long time. When the rest of the movie, while the animation's not great, it's better than this. And that's just the stupidest turn I have ever seen a movie make with its animation choices. Because it's not even cell animated, it's 3D cell shading on this thing.
Yeah.
It looks
Right.
like it belonged in Spider-Man Enter the Spider-Verse. And it doesn't work. It wouldn't work in that movie either, but it definitely doesn't work here.
It's true.
Anyway,
Oh my.
rant over. Who would like to say their next disappointment, since I went out of order?
Go Dallas.
All right, so my next one is since we you kind of tapped on it earlier. Gilda doesn't make sense for any of the animated scenes where we see the murder Holiday at all. Her body does not fit when you see him in the grove at the murder of Maroni. You don't see it when at the death of Alberto. Killing Alberto didn't even make sense. There was no explanation for that whatsoever. If this was a man she loved, it doesn't make sense for her to have killed him the way she did.
Yeah.
I can take that she killed him because she was mad at him for not sticking up for her.
I can
maybe?
see that. But at the same
That's
time,
the
be like,
closest I can get, though.
yeah, but like, go ahead.
I was just, it just didn't work for me. Like nothing. And again, it was, I get that they wanted to change the story for their reasons. And it was a great, like, oh my God, Gilda? Really? Like it took me by surprise until like right at the end when he started questioning the whole Oxford thing.
Yeah,
That's
that was
whenever
good.
I was like, oh, it's Gilda. It's not Dent. That's what they're going with it. But even with that, it's just like it didn't line up. What were you gonna say, Jacob?
No, I was when you mentioned the Oxford turn, I was like, oh, okay. That's when it started turning like who the Holiday Killer really was. But yeah, I totally see your point because like looking at the way the comic, like understanding how the comic ended originally and how this ends, it still makes it throws you for a loop. It's like, okay, it's the wife. I understand her motivation, but the idea of does she don like this big suit to become the Holiday Killer? Like in every scene, it's a guy who's built like Harvey Dent.
Exactly. Who's tall?
She went to another production there on the Warner Brothers grounds and borrowed Brain's suit from the Pinky and the Brain show. And somehow she's able to fit in there. That's what happened.
That's the only way to explain it. Like, because again, every time you see the animation of Holiday, the body type does not line up. I don't care what she has to grow an extra like what 2.5 feet, 2 feet. She has to bulk up. I mean, there's some big shoulder pads she's wearing.
6 inches shorter than Harvey.
Yeah, she's a very petite woman, and my thought was it's the fact that like she convinces Harvey or at least his Two-Face side to go do the deed. So that's why you see a man as Holiday.
Sophia was a better body size for the Holiday Killer than Gilda.
Yes,
agreed. But it's just I completely see your point.
That's because she's a giant ape of a woman.
Yeah, I wouldn't call her a woman. I mean, like an ape. Let me rephrase that.
Yes, please.
Let me rephrase that.
Please call her a woman.
I wouldn't call her an ape.
Admittedly, I may have overstepped my bounds there.
Right.
But
maybe a bit. I mean, she's a large Italian woman who would bench press you, Drew.
Yes.
Exactly.
I really shouldn't be saying anything because she could kill me.
Yeah, very easily. She break you like spell over knee.
What?
You talking about crushing a sparrow edge between my thighs?
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
Lord. But anyways, that was my issue. Was Gilda like the animation did not make sense for them to depend on her. The way it plays out in the comic, it makes sense for you to go, oh, maybe, but not the way they played off in here. Not at all.
Yeah, agreed.
It would have been different if she was more Harvey Dent's size. But yeah, you're right.
At least taller.
She doesn't fit. She doesn't fill out that costume.
No,
there's no way she did.
I mean, shoulder pads were big in the 80s, but not that big.
Yeah, agreed.
They didn't make you grow 3 feet.
No. Again, my only explanation would be is like she somehow taps into Harvey Dent's dark side and makes him go do the deed. And hint, Harvey doesn't remember doing it. So
That seems too convoluted for the way the story is handled.
agreed.
Anyway, so.
Agreed. So that's the only explanation I could give for that.
Don't get me wrong, I love convolutions, but
Yeah, I agree. It's just more. It's like that's in my mind rationalizing. It's like that's the only reason why. That's the only reason how they could have done that. But your point of the unexpected wife being the killer the entire time, and she somehow morphing herself into a male figure that looks like Harvey Dent.
Yeah,
just makes no sense.
It almost feels like when they started storyboarding this, they intended for the holiday killer to actually be Harvey Dent.
Yeah.
But then somewhere over the course of the story, they changed it to Gilda, but it was after they had done all the rest of the animation for it. It's almost what it feels like.
If they had kept Holiday in the shadows, where all you saw was maybe the hat, maybe the back, or the glove, the sleeve.
Yeah.
Then I could have rolled with you guys on this, but they showed too many full frame shots of them.
I hear what you're saying.
Completely agree. It falls into that believability.
It causes you to lose your suspension of disbelief.
There we go.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
So my second dislike.
Hey, wait a minute! You didn't get mine first.
My apologies. First dislike, my friend.
Well, actually, mine actually goes into your first dislike. The exact same. Oh my gosh, the animation. So Dallas brought this up. I think it's either you or Dallas brought it up.
Dallas brought it up, and
yes,
and I mean no offense, but I do wonder if I noticed the animation more now because we talked about it.
Yes,
because I swear I don't remember it looking as much like Archer the first time.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at it, and I was like, oh man, I can see that movement perfectly.
Yeah. So speaking of Archer, I kind of titled it the Archer animation style. Definitely the beginning, where we get Bruce is being manipulated by
Poison Ivy.
Poison Ivy. Thank you. I went brain fired. Like, what the character's name again? But Poison Ivy. I'm looking at like, oh my god, like the huge thick lines for the outline of the characters. I'm like, this looks terrible. Like, what in the world are they thinking? Like, it gets better throughout the rest of the episode, the movie, but it's just like they start off with this really chunky art. And I'm like, this isn't like artistically, this is not attractive at all. It's very like, again, blocky and just like, yeah, I understand you're trying to make it look more like a comic, but it looks so just like not appealing at all. Thankfully they sharpen, they tool down the edges a little bit. There again, like you said before, Drew, the fact it looks like cheap animation.
Yeah.
And this scene, it looks so incredibly cheap. That just drove me up the wall. I was like, what in the world? So yeah, my first dislike is the Archer style of animation, and that first scene where Bruce has been in captivity for what, 2 months, 3 months?
3 months. This is like March.
Yeah, 3 months.
Well, it's after St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I couldn't figure out if this was happening on April Fool's Day or like right after April Fool's Day.
Right. So yeah, that's my first dislike. What is your second dislike, Drew?
Well, I need to actually ask Dallas a question. Because he's actually read the book. My question is the 3 months that Poison Ivy has control of Bruce in the movie, does that happen in the comic?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't remember it being 3 months.
Like she's useless in this movie.
Say what?
Otherwise, I feel like she was just thrown in this movie for the sole purpose of allowing part 1 to have a cliffhanger as its after credit scene.
Yeah. No, she was in it in the book. The Joker was in it. Calendar Man was in it. And obviously Riddler was in it. I don't remember a ton of other characters showing up though. I think Scarecrow was in it, but I don't remember Hatter.
It's just her being used in this. Well, for one thing, the version of her that's used in this is like completely different from every other form of poison ivy I've seen.
Mm.
And admittedly, I've not read a lot of Batman comics, if I'm being honest. But it felt like this was not. I couldn't figure out what her motivation for working for Falcone was. And it felt like, for the most part, like I said, she was here so part one could have an after credits scene cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there was one point where I was watching and going, Alfred, are you happy with this? Because you seem to be playing along. You've got to be under the same mind control Bruce is.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes so like the end when Catwoman cuts it off that you actually, oh yeah, he's under control too.
Yeah.
It's like, you could have shown that a little faster, in my opinion.
It was funny because when we watched that.
And the other problem this gives for me is not only is probably Bruce Wayne not gone out or gone out very little during this time while Poison Ivy's got her
vines around
vines in him, for lack of a better term. Batman probably has definitely not gone out during this time.
No.
They show that, and no one involved in any of this has pointed out, hey, we've got Bruce Wayne we've got control of Bruce Wayne in the mob. The mob's not thinking we got control of Bruce Wayne. Why is Batman not showing up? I wonder if there's a connection there. And no one is thinking, hey, Bruce Wayne hasn't shown up in any of these high society things. It's not really strange for him, but usually at least makes a token appearance around town every once in a while. By the way, have you seen Batman? He hadn't shown up either. Mm-hmm. Gee, I wonder.
To be fair,
I wonder if Bruce Wayne could be Batman.
Right?
Admittedly, I go into this knowing, okay, Bruce Wayne is Batman. Everybody in our world knows this. Even people who have never watched a Batman movie knows Batman is Bruce Wayne and that Bruce Wayne is rich. So maybe that's me looking at it strangely, but why has nobody put this together in this movie yet? And I get that this is like Batman's second year,
right?
In while he's doing stuff of actually being Batman,
right?
So maybe they haven't put two and two together yet, but there's just so much left open here. And it's like, has no one seen all the vines growing around Wayne Manor?
This is legitimately
fixed with a fire here.
This is legitimately one of my issues with the change up they did, because in the comics, he wasn't just confined to the house with her like they made it appear in this movie. He went out, like he actually went to the board meetings to sign over the rights to things to Falcone.
And that would make a lot more sense. And you could have shown that. You had the backgrounds for those scenes made for other scenes. You could have made that work here. Mm-hmm. There was no reason to keep him cooped up in Wayne Manor the whole time. Plus, you're telling me Poison Ivy's got her vines all over Wayne Manor and hasn't found even accidentally found the secret entrance to the Batcave?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
They've been there for 3 months. I don't care how big Wayne Manor is, you are going to accidentally set that thing off somehow, because Bruce Wayne pretty much has to get there as soon as he can.
Yeah, pretty much.
Probably more than one entrance. I don't know this for certain, but I'm betting there's more than one entrance. But anyway, Poison Ivy feels like could have been left out of this and the story would have fared better. Or just done it more like the comic. Here's a wild idea.
Starting to sound like me, Drew.
I'm just saying, if what you're adapting is doing it better than what you're doing, maybe look at how the comic did it. They may have an idea how this story is supposed to go.
Just maybe.
So, Dallas, what's your second dislike?
I've been debating because I have two more on my list that I was trying to figure out which one I wanted to say. But I'm going to go with the conversation about the villain team up at the very end. Again, it doesn't work with the world that they've established. I don't care that he freed them from Arkham. These are the villains that Harvey put away himself. They're not going to work with him. They're not going to want to help him.
I would agree. Yeah.
he's still an unknown quantity to them. He is the new guy if he's actually on their side.
Exactly. It just made no sense. There is a specific thing there's several things that took place in the comics where because there was a team up at the end of the villains and it made sense because of some backstory they built up. But here, nothing. It's just like he formed the Dark Avengers. He's like, let's go kill Falcone, and that was it. And it didn't make any sense. So that's one of my biggest. That's one of my dislikes about it. It's just the villain plot. The Rogues Gallery has been such a big plot hole issue the entire time that we've been doing of this entire film, and it annoyed me. The fight scene was cool. It was fun, but it just doesn't work. It falls if you think about it.
Yeah, it does make you think when you said that. There's so many little plots in this movie. They just like once you like start like rationalizing them and start breaking them down, it makes no sense.
Right. So there you go.
All right, Jacob.
Mine kind of goes to a question. Like all dislikes are great. They are very valid in themselves. Mine is primarily a question. All right, so at the very end of the movie, Batman confronts Harvey's wife. What's her name again?
Gilda.
Thank you. So he confronts Gilda, and she says, "Be like, yeah, the long Halloween is over. The holiday killer is done." But is she? But like, yes, she be like Batman does not turn her in because Harvey was a beloved friend of his, and so he doesn't want to turn in Gilda. But my question would be, or is the holiday killer done? Is Gilda done doing what she's set out to do? Yes, she's killed all the mob she's literally defanged it. But is she truly done? Because it leaves it open. Because now it'd be like, yeah, she's throwing away all the holiday killer evidence and burning it, but she's still the mastermind behind the holiday killer. And Bruce, Batman, lets her go. So are we going to see replications of this in future installments of films, or is this be like, to me it's like this story isn't done if we're leaving the idea that Gilda is the true mastermind behind everything, and Harvey took the fall for Gilda, which like makes sense because he loves her, but be like her sense of revenge, be like, is that truly satisfied? Because the idea be like, if be like you get revenge, and you hear this so often through pop culture and media that like, yeah, you get revenge, but you still have to be like your that desire is still going to continue. That you want revenge, but it's never satisfied. Because that sinful desire is still there, so you can't like it's still not contained.
Right.
So you're still going to have to lust after something else in order to satisfy that desire. So my question still remains: is Gilda, the holiday killer, finished? I don't think so, because it leaves it up so ambiguously that it could be like she could still go kill more people to satisfy that desire or that revenge that is still unfulfilled in her life.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's my question. So
Well,
I don't think it's done.
Well, you know why ice cream and revenge are the same, are similar,
Because they're best served cold.
and they say revenge is sweet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is true.
ice cream is like revenge because revenge. They're both cold and best served. They're both best served cold and they're sweet.
Agreed. So
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, just how this movie ends and understanding Bruce's perspective, how much he loved Harvey to death as a friend, and he just lets Gilda go. And to me, looking at it from a Christian perspective, no, she's not done, because there's no way on earth to be like, if you've had this desire to kill
Yeah.
an entire family.
And she's completely unrepentant about it.
No, she's
too.
not.
Yeah.
She's completely like, it's like, yeah, oh yeah, he's be like the killing's done, but is it?
Right.
I don't think so. Because the way this movie is left open, it's like they could simply go back to be like, nope, Gil becomes the holiday killer again, or be like, they could do all kinds of stuff with this story. It just, far as I understood with the comic, the forgotten son is the killer,
Yeah.
and what is it? Harvey takes the fall.
It's yes and no. It's kind of
I think
ambiguous.
Yeah, it's supposed to be ambiguous.
It's ambiguous, but
We
at
know
the same
for sure
time,
that what?
Good. Go
And
ahead.
we know for sure that the son was the holiday killer,
Yes.
which in that of itself was one of my problems with this movie series was Falcone was not a butthole towards his son, as we saw in those movies. In the comic books, he generally loved his son, but he thought his son wasn't strong enough to be involved with these things. And also in the comics, he brings in Sophia. In fact, when Sophia goes, "I want to help," he goes, "Your family needs you," and she's now on the hunt to find out who the Holiday is and to get rid of Holiday herself, which was another slap in the face of Antonio because he wasn't allowed in the room. He wasn't allowed to help the family. He was considered weak the entire time. So this was a whole thing, was him proving himself to his father.
That makes sense.
And but with that, there was this ambiguous, because at the end, it is Two-Face who goes, who revealed to Batman and Gordon, he goes, "I always told you there were two of them." And there were always two holiday killers. And Gordon and Bruce, and this is what, change up, Gordon and Batman, they assumed he was just talking out of his head as if he's obsessed with twos now that he's Two-Face. They never came to the conclusion about Gilda. Gilda happens basically in an after credit scene of her doing that in secret.
All right.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's just the way this movie, the way it ends. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
I get you.
There again, there's a lot of how if you dissect this movie so much, it breaks apart, and there's just. I like the movie. It's great, but when you dissect it, it's just crumbles.
Yeah. It's a fun movie, but
Yeah.
well, I'm not going to go further because I'll give my rating.
All right.
Well, in that case, if we're ready, we'll move into the ratings.
Yeah.
Dallas, what is your rating?
My rating, again, trying to understand, this was a fun film. It was enjoyable. But when you take the step back and look at everything that's going on, there's a lot of major plot holes that bothered me. So I'm going to give it 7, maybe a
Okay.
6.5. 7.
Jacob?
Going with a 7.
Okay, going with 7. Like before the conversation, I had a number in my head, but after this, very long discussion about this film, that has changed rapidly. So, which is always good. It's always good when you have great conversation. It changes your perspective on things.
Sure.
It helps you understand things better.
This is why I generally don't put a number on it till it's my turn to say something.
Right. I'm very much the opposite. I've got a number set, and then the conversation progresses more and more and more. It's like, oh, okay, now I see what's going on. Yeah, totally get it now. So mine would definitely be, I'll definitely give it a 7. Be like, it's fun. It's a fun movie. There's some good animation here and there. Like it's got some, like the meat of the story is there, but
Yeah.
once you start dissecting everything, it falls apart.
Mhm.
Like almost the entire story falls apart. And like you have great voice actors, just good story beat, but there again, you cut into it and you start peeling the layers of the onion apart, it just starts falling apart as a film. So yeah, fun film, but you dive into the rabbit hole, you're gonna get so lost and just it gets so messy. It's such a messy movie, but probably a 6.5. Probably a 6.5 for me.
So like I said, I don't normally give a number. I don't actually never give a number before it's time for me to give a number.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to have given a number to it before this afternoon, when I really started trying to think about my thoughts on this movie, I'm like y'all, I think I would have given it a 7. But after having seriously thought about the movie, I think I'm going to have to take it down a notch to 6.
Wow.
Okay.
And the reason is I get the feeling that they approach this like a what if story. Like, what if for certain that Gilda was the holiday killer and there was none of this ambiguousness with other people? But the problem with that is they didn't think it out through enough, because they're still trying to adapt all the major plot points. And admittedly, I'm looking at this as a what if story after I just saw 9 very good what if stories that Marvel made. And I'm looking at this going, y'all, this did not put as much thought into this as y'all really should have, because you leave too many things to make you think, even after they reveal Gilda is Holiday.
Right.
There's still too many, nothing of dense possibilities is resolved away.
Right.
Nothing of the first movie's version of, what is his name? Alberto. None of that clears up either. It still feels like they are also the holiday killer.
Yeah.
Right.
It's supposed to be her then throughout all the holidays.
Right.
But they make it feel like they left in all the red herrings that didn't resolve themselves. When you have red herrings, you're supposed to resolve them to make it so like, of course, that couldn't have been them.
Right.
But they left it open enough where it still feels like it's them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still looking at What If, that show, and thinking they did 9 stories, actually 10, but one of them got pushed off till season 2 for it to actually be released.
Right.
And they did such a good job with all of them that I can't look at this and going, y'all should be paying attention to what Marvel's doing, because they just showed y'all up.
Yes.
And admittedly, they were telling more original stories, so they had to put more thought into it. But if you're adapting a story and you've decided you want to make one person specifically the killer, you better adapt the rest of it to where it feels like by the time that's revealed, it makes sense that she's the only person who the killer could be.
Absolutely.
And they didn't do that here. And that's my general thoughts on why it's a 6.
So, real talk, if the horse wasn't so bad, would it have been a 7?
No. If the horse wasn't there, it might have gone up to 6.5. The horse knocked it down along with this other thoughts of the mystery being completely poorly written.
Oh,
Hey, they could have gone more cheaper. They could have just created a character with coconuts.
That would have made it better.
That would have made it better. It would have pissed the fans off royally, but that would have made the film better. Make it a parody of itself.
Have the Mad Hatter just following the scarecrow.
Yes.
Yes.
That would have. Yeah. I'm now picturing this: the Mad Hatter actually being in the harness with coconuts. Oh, Francisco's going to love this. Anyway, that brings us to the end of another episode, which means we need to talk about what we're reviewing on our next episode. Which our next episode, now that we're moving out of Halloween, we are moving into our yearly tradition of Ghibli and Miyazaki month.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
And
go.
our first movie for this month is going to be Pom Poko.
Oh.
Nice.
Another movie that we suggest you don't let your kids see. Because even though it would have worked fine as a kid's movie in Japan, there are some cultural differences that I'm going to suggest don't work over
Yeah,
here.
apparently they're very large too.
They're tanukis. Just Google search what tanukis are famous for in Japan and we'll move on.
Yeah.
In Japanese culture.
Yeah.
But anyway, before we leave, I put on Facebook today a trivia question. And, or in the day of recording, I put a trivia question in here. I'm going to read it right quick. What was released on November 5th, 2004, that is generally considered the last major production in the United States using blank prior to the video game Cuphead? Any ideas?
What was the game or the?
It was a TV show. I'll give you that. I'll be that nice.
TV show.
It was an episode of a TV show.
Traditional animation?
Not going to answer actually here.
Okay.
Oh.
Next week, I will
Gotcha.
reveal the answer, but I wanted to go ahead and read the trivia question.
I gotcha. Good call.
Dang.
So join us next week for that, plus our review of Pom Poko. I think I would know this by now.
Come, Jacob, we must prepare for next week.
Prepare for what, Drew?
The same thing we do every week, Jacob. Record a podcast!
Oh, boy.
Where can we find you at, Dallas?
You can find me at geekdevotions.com, where my wife and I, we're the co-creators of Geek Devotions, where we take geek pop culture items like movies, video games, and comic books. We use them to let people know that they are loved. We do that through weekly devotionals. We do it through a podcast called Calm Talk by Geek Devotions. A new podcast that we just started called The Bottom Shelf, where my friends John Haryu and Kevin, the Dapper Man himself, review terrible movies so that you don't have to watch them. And yeah, that's pretty much all of our stuff. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just look for Geek Devotions.
Awesome. So we're glad you were able to join us.
Thank you, Dallas.
2 weeks in a row, Dallas.
Yes.
It's been fun.
More than I could have asked for me, even though I did ask.
You had to put the insanity of us two.
Hey, you guys are fun. I love you guys.
When you put yourself up for this movie, I got to think, does he mean both? Does he only really want to review one of these two movies? Surely not, but I'll double ask, and you said sure, so
Hey,
we thank you for coming on.
Yes, very much. Thank you.
when it comes to Batman, I'm all game. When it comes to hang out with you guys, I'm always game.
Alrighty then. So join us next week for Pom Poko, and until then, this has been Drew,
This is Jacob.
and we'll catch you in the next frame.
So where can they find you, Jacob?
You can find me on Facebook at Jacob B. Heron, also on Facebook at Jacob's Daily Art Corner, where I try to draw each and every day. I don't get to it as often as I like, but join me there. Also, you can find me on Instagram at Jacob B. Heron, on Twitter at Jacob Heron, and Letterboxd at Jacob Heron. So where can they find you, Drew?
You can also follow me on Letterboxd at ggeorge759, Facebook as Drew Dodgen, my Facebook page where you can see pictures I've taken at Drew's Photo Bin. You can also follow me on Twitter at ggeorge759.
You can email us at thecellcastpodcast at gmail.com.
You can also follow us on Twitter at cast_cell.
You can follow us on Twitch at twitch.tv/thecellcastgaming.
You can also follow us on YouTube at Cellcast,
Listen to our podcast on Apple Podcasts,
Google Play Podcasts,
Stitcher,
Spotify.
and your favorite podcast directory.
You can also listen to us on the Movie of the Week podcast with Jim Heron, where we talk about live action movies. And remember, Cell is a single L.